everything crashed. And so the whole website was down for a little bit. Website came back up, but all of the data was gone. All of the user data, all of the photos, all of the stories, all of the everything gone. When your business is holding space for people and you've lost that, you've really lost the trust of everyone.
Hey there, friend. This is Stephanie Crevens, and this is the Mid-Level Leaders Hot Mess Hotline, the best podcast to teach you how to be an entrepreneur, someone who thinks with focus, innovation, and strategy. My friends, you are in for a special treat today. We have Aimee Kandrac. She is the CEO and co-founder of WhatFriendsDo.com. One of the things that I hear from my mid-level leaders is that they just want to know that their CEO is a human being, that they're vulnerable, that they can mess up. And Aimee gives you all of that and so much more. My friend, the lessons that you're going to take away from today, grab the Kleenex. That's all I'm saying. She is getting so real with us. Let me tell you about Aimee. Her story began when a close friend was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor at the age of 25. Aimee and her mom and her sister took charge and coordinated all of the non-medical care and rallied hundreds of friends to show their support. Recognizing that there's a simpler way to coordinate that care, Aimee co-founded WhatFriendsDo.com. Aimee is an innovator, an instigator, a giver, a leader, and she excels at inspiring others to just pitch in and help. Now, not only is Aimee extremely compassionate, she is an award-winning tech entrepreneur. She's based here out of Indianapolis. She has won many awards, including being nominated for Indy's Best and Brightest by Junior Achievement of Central Indiana, and as a Top 50 Mompreneur of the Year from eBabble.com. She has been featured in numerous magazines that you know and read: Forbes.com, Fortune, Time, LA Times, Advancing Women, my personal favorite, Oprah.com. All right, my friends, let's dig into this conversation with Aimee. Let's hear the real deal stuff that CEOs go through and how you can learn to think like an entrepreneur, because what Aimee's going to share with you is that every decision has so many layers that go behind that decision, that go before that decision, and why you need to know those at your level so you can support your CEO. Let's dig in, my friends. I am here with my new friend, Aimee Kandrac. She is the CEO of What Friends Do. Aimee, bring us into your hot mess that you experienced.
It's one that's still really tender, and it's been quite a few years. So I'll just, because I'm going to give you some background on my company first.
Yes, please.
Because I think that's going to help us set the stage for what made this so extraordinarily hard for me as a CEO.
Okay.
So What Friends Do is software that allows people to organize help when there's a major life event. And the story I'm going to share was when my best friend's son was diagnosed with cancer. And he was a really, really good friend of my kids too. Like, I remember the day he was spending the night at our house, and I called her and I said, he just looks green, right? His skin color is just not right. And it wasn't. And here it was that I had this amazing company that I had built to help people, and my best friend got the opportunity, sadly, to use it. And we created Team C because all of their names started with C. And so all the first names of the 5 people in the family started with C, and we created Team C on What Friends Do. And we were sharing stories and updates with hundreds of people. There were well over 400 people following on a daily basis what was going on. And I mean, they were in isolation in the hospital for 100 days. And this was way pre-pandemic, right? So the idea of isolation was completely new. It's not even something anybody wants to deal with now, even in the pandemic. When you've got an elementary school kid and 2 other elementary age siblings, and you can only have, quarantined 2 or 3 people in for 100 days, it was really hard.
Sounds like it.
So we were organizing the whole school community. Lots of people were following along. And the good news is that he survived, he's super healthy, and everything's great.
Awesome.
The bad news is that about 6 months into this journey, when they were recording every aspect of their life, my website crashed. And not only did it crash, but somehow none of our backups worked. And we lost everything.
Wow.
We lost their whole story.
Oh.
It was, so that's the personal version of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also have tens of thousands of other users all across the world who the same thing happened to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when I have a technology crash, when anyone has a technology crash, it sucks, right? Users are upset. People get frustrated. Why isn't this working? For What Friends Do, we're really holding people's lives in a really, really critical time for them.
Mm-hmm.
And losing that data, I feel dirty saying it as data, right? This is their story.
I could see that. Yes.
Right? This is the story of one of the most intimate times and the most vulnerable times and the most critical times in their entire life, hopefully. And this was my best friend, and I lost all of that for her.
Yeah, in the coaching world, we talk about holding space for people, and What Friends Do holds digital space for emotional support, physical support. And it sounds like you feel like you lost the container. You lost the ability to hold that space for them.
We lost the whole container, and we never got it back, right? We never got it back. It was gone. We were pulling in attorneys, trying to call our hosting service to see if they had extra backups. I still don't know why our backups didn't work. It created a lot of contention amongst the small crew of staff at What Friends Do. Why wasn't our backup in place? Why didn't we have it? Why can't we find it? And then the emotional place of me being like, and this is my best friend's story.
Yes. So walk us through those moments as a business owner. What's going through your mind as you realize it's gone?
Right. As a business owner, first, it was just so hard to untangle myself into the business owner.
Of course.
So it just was so hard to untangle myself into the business owner. So it was full on crisis mode. Who do we have to get to when? Who else do we need to bring in? And what are those longer term ramifications just as a business?
Yes.
Are people going to sue us because we lost everything? Are all of our policies really in check and tight enough that we're going to be able to be sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
That no one's going to sue us.
Isn't that the worst feeling in the world when in the moment of crisis, your brain, and for practical and scary reasons, your brain goes to, oh my God, are the attorneys going to have to be involved? Who's going to sue? That breaks my heart. I've had a few of those moments, and it's just.
Well, and because the first person I do call after the programmers and the developers to be like, what the fuck just happened?
Is a woman deeply impacted by it on another emotional level.
Right. So after that, you're calling attorneys who are calling like everybody, right? You're calling the cloud service, you're calling like everything and escalating it. Like, who else do we have to escalate it to? And every time you bring an attorney in, and I love attorneys, I really do. I know a lot of people don't, but I really do. And I'm really good friends with many, many, many. And I very much appreciate what they do. But they jump to the worst case scenario because that's what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
And they were making me even more nervous.
I could see that. Yes. Yes.
So as the CEO and business owner, you're like, well, I hadn't even thought about blah, 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 or whatever other worst case scenario you're coming up with.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So, I mean, that lasted quite a few days.
Okay.
Of crisis. Like, what are we doing? Who are we going to get? How are we going to try and figure all of this out?
And just for clarity's sake, was the website down completely, or was just a huge, like, significant chunk just deleted? Was there any basic functionality working?
So gosh, this was so long ago and it was so bad. I don't even remember all the like details of that. I think what happened is everything crashed and so the whole website was down for a little bit.
Okay.
Website came back up, but all of the data was gone. So all of the user data, all of the photos, all of the stories, all of the everything gone. But the website came back up.
Okay.
And so our structure was there, but we lost all of our data. And when your business is holding space for people and you've lost that, you've really lost the trust of everyone. So I essentially had no more users anymore, right? I did have backups of users, but I didn't have their trust anymore. Why would I? So, I mean, it really became a, what are we doing? Can we move forward moment?
Wow. So heartbreaking, business breaking, the potential to be relationship breaking.
I really haven't talked to her much since.
Oh, Aimee.
It was really hard.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
You know. But the months after that were, I really didn't have a business at that point. And how was I going to go back to anyone to say, please trust me with this. Let me help you.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's good. This is the stuff.
It was a huge inflection point with the business.
I could see that.
It paused for a long time.
What's a long time, just to help us frame that up and understand your situation?
Well, the website was still running. New teams who didn't know about this were being created. So the business was still going, but the relationship with my head developer was pretty much ruined at that point.
And why is that? I don't want to make any assumptions there.
I think it was just a whole long host of reasons. Right. It was, and that wasn't the only one. Okay. But it was kind of the breaking point. And that's not entirely true, but it got to that point where they were the one in charge of ensuring that we had backup. So, right. I'm the CEO. It always comes down to me.
Of course.
Right.
Yes.
But I don't code. I don't set those things up. I relied on these kinds of things. And there's a lot I can unpack as a leader. There's a lot I still should unpack as a leader around all of this. I know I didn't handle it the best. And I know he felt horrible about the situation too. Right.
Not to be morbid, but that's kind of a good sign that there's at least feeling some bad, because there's a lot of people that are very apathetic about their jobs. So
no, he definitely wasn't. He definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
His heart was 1000% in it. That's why he was working with me. But I think the relationship was just not repairable at that point.
Yes.
And my motivation as a leader, we were really in our infancy still. We weren't making a ton of money. Was it worth the amount of time and effort to continue?
It's a big question.
Yeah. So there were just so many questions in my head. Is this really what I want to keep doing after I failed? So your original question was, what's a long time? Like, what's that pause look like? It was probably 6 months.
Okay.
It was probably 6 months of soul searching. What do I want to do? How do I want to do this? If I'm going to do this, what's it going to look like? And I made the decision to come back. Ultimately, I know I have a product that helps people. Nobody's perfect. Technology's not perfect, but that doesn't mean you quit.
Yes.
And I'm saying this to remind myself of this too, right?
Yes.
This is not just wise words of wisdom for others. This is, okay, let me remind myself of that too.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. The advice I give clients sometimes, I'm like, if you only knew that this is what I needed to say to myself in the mirror this morning, like, no one has it all figured out. We just...
Oh, gosh. And I still don't, right? I mean, there's so many more hot messes I could mention, but so many other times of like long soul searching. Well, is this worth it? Is this what I should really be doing? Is this really the direction to go? And where that led me was to really change the business model.
Okay.
And go from our B2C model that we were exclusively at that point and switch to a B2B model as well.
That's a huge shift. And I want to dig into that in a second. Can I ask you some questions about that 6 month time frame?
You can, and we'll see what I remember.
That's right. I mean, this is why I have no friends. I'm like, let's stay in the suck for just a little bit so we can learn from it. Please, Aimee.
You're good. You're good.
But you said you were asking yourself some really big questions. How did you continue to show up for the world while you were struggling through all of this? And here's why I ask this. So for listeners, and Aimee, I shared a little bit with you, like after, when I had foster children and they went to go live with their birth mom, I made myself get out of bed every single day, except for one. And I think I took a long mid-afternoon nap when I just could not take the world anymore. But getting out of bed and purposefully showing up for other people who needed me was my saving grace. So I'm always curious, like, how do folks, and there's many ways to do it. I'm probably a little too driven for my own good sometimes, but so I'm always curious, like, how do people get through the shit, like it's not even a messy middle. It's just the slog of grief that feels unending, is non-linear, right? One day you're in problem solving mode. The next day, like you need 47 cups of coffee just to make it to 9 a.m. How did you show up for the world during that time when you were wrestling with some really big questions for your life and for your business and dealing with some heartbreak of your own?
I have 2 kids and they were little at the time. So I didn't have a choice but to get up and show up for them. And so I think it was really just reprioritizing how I showed up for a while.
Okay. Yes.
And leaning into only being a mom for a little bit. And that was hard for me. Not because I didn't want to be a mom, not for that reason, but only because a lot of my identity was wrapped up in my work.
That makes sense. And sometimes when our souls are in such anguish, we can only hold on to one role at a time and do it well. Because you didn't say I need to hold on to be a really great wife or really great woman. It's like the children, and I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just, what I heard is that,
nope.
And I hear this from a lot of people, right? Like my spousal duties, like I wasn't the best spouse during this time. I wasn't the best, other roles, because I could only physically be one as a human being, because that's all my spirit could do. And that's okay. Like, that's okay.
And it was really hard on my marriage.
Yeah.
Right? Because I had poured so much into it, and it had taken away from the family, the amount of time I had been putting into the business, and then to have it fail And I was upset. I was clearly depressed. I'm sure I was not my lovely, bubbly self to be around at that point.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
Yes.
It was really hard. And it was the only thing I could do. So, and it was summer. So the time was such that they were out of school and I could focus on them.
That makes sense.
But it was also hard because it was summer and they were involved in activities with all those people who I had just let down.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So, because as I mentioned, there were hundreds of people who were on this daily and it was all gone.
Yeah.
So everybody knew.
How did you handle, I mean, I can only imagine, the heartbreak from your community, that perspective too, and probably feeling ostracized in many ways. And hopefully some other folks gave you grace where it was much deserved. How did you handle the more PR aspect? I mean, I'm sure your Google reviews during that time were not great. I'm sure, some of that stuff, which is always just like incredibly painful to read if it's anything less than a 4-star. If you're anything like me, right? Like, how did you handle that piece of it?
I'm trying to really remember. It was such a big black hole, honestly, that I don't remember.
A great coping mechanism that humans have is to block out really bad memories to get us through. It's it's
exactly.
Legit.
Exactly. I think I ignored it because I could.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it's the right thing. I'm not saying it's what I should have done, and I'm not saying it's what I would do in the future, I hope. But at that point, it didn't really matter.
But when it came to the energy that you had and when you were able to prioritize, you had to choose something much more important than Google reviews. And it was answering existential questions about yourself, your family, your business. That makes complete sense to me.
Like, they just didn't matter.
And in 10 years, they won't. Yeah. In 10 years, it won't.
Yeah. People were angry. I sent out a statement and an apology to everyone. And what we could save and salvage, we did. Well, I couldn't do anything. There was nothing I could do at that point.
Yeah. You were powerless over the technology, but you could apologize. You could show up for relationships.
And I think I did provide some resources like, let's ask your friends if they've saved everything, because a lot of people save every email. And so we were able to salvage some of it.
Wonderful.
But like all the comments and posts and stuff like that, it was, but the PR around it, I just ignored it because I didn't have, there was nothing I could do.
Yes.
That's what I told myself.
Well, so let's go into break for a second. And when we come back, I've got lots of questions about coming out of this hot mess, including how many backups do you have now? I'm curious. Is it like in the hundreds?
Freaking better be.
Right.
That's what's written down on the specs.
That's right.
Like every redundant has another redundant, right?
I could see why you would have that. But before we get into that and the business model switch into B2B and for you as a leader and you as a woman, as a human, as a wife, as a mother, what has come out of this? Anything else that you think is really important for our listeners to know about what you went through during this really tough personal and business time?
Looking back, I don't think I could have made a bad choice of like shutting it down or keep going. Right. I think that at the time, actually, it was probably a gift that I was able to just spend more time with my kids. And I can't promise that there's always another disaster, right? There's always another hot mess.
Yes.
It's really how we choose to not gloss over it. I don't mean gloss over it, but how we choose to frame it so that when we're going forward, I guess, so that we can justify what we've done and the decision that we're making. So that I could justify to my husband that the time and energy that I was about to put into restarting this was going to be worthwhile.
Yes.
And the break was a gift to spend extra time with my kids. And as they're like graduating high school soon, and I'm realizing that they're going to leave soon, I miss those times. So I guess that's the little bit of good that came out of it.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. It's fantastic. All right. Well, let's go to commercial break, and then we're going to come back and hear from Aimee how she walked herself back up. And spoiler alert, she's built a successful company again. And I know this because I read about her in our local business news. So I know she's doing great things. So we'll be back in just a minute. This season of the Hot Mess Hotline is brought to you by my Hot Mess Quiz. One of the common lessons that my clients learn during coaching is how to really evaluate a problem, dissect it for clarity, and then take action on the tasks that really move the needle. The Hot Mess Quiz can bring you that focus too. As a leader, your work life is full of, well, work. But according to Pareto, 80% of that work isn't even impactful. If you need to create growth and change, you need to focus in on what truly matters and what will drive new results. Take the Hot Mess Quiz by clicking on the link below, which is stephaniecrevens.com/Hot Mess Quiz. You know, just like this podcast promised, and this is in the real world too, what happens when people stop being polite and start getting real? That's what you're going to get in this report. It's going to be tailored to your business hot mess to tell you exactly where to focus your efforts first, and then how to bring your team along to get the change that you need to create. Go to stephaniecrevens.com/Hot Mess Quiz. Don't wait another minute to start becoming the pro troublemaker you've always wanted to be. Let's dig back into Aimee's fabulousness that she has created now. And Aimee, as we walk back out of the travesty, the heartbreak of that digital collapse that you had, that container that just fell apart in many ways, first and foremost, what have you learned about what it means to be a CEO?
The thing that I struggle with not only that collapse, but every even little hot mess that comes up, because they come up all the time.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Some are bigger than others. Some hit me emotionally, some don't. But especially those that hit me emotionally, the thing that I struggle with the most is how much of that do I share with my team? Because everybody's struggling. If it's really that much of a problem, everybody's got something, and I have to be the leader.
That's right.
But we're a small team, and we form really close relationships. So finding that balance as to how much do I share about how sad I am, how upset I am, how unsure I am about the next step, about where is the business as we move forward. All of that uncertainty, or it's easier to share the positives, right? Right.
That's even bit me in the butt a couple of times where I had a really big deal on the horizon that I was so excited about, and I've shared it prematurely. You either jinx yourself or get them hyped up. I've had to learn, like, also internally, don't share that till there is a signature on the contract and it's a done deal. So I feel you on both sides of that. Yeah, I feel you on both sides of that.
We actually just in the past couple of weeks had a really big investor had to back out. And we had been so excited about it because it was going to be a really, really amazing investor. All of our investors are amazing, but this one was going to kind of we were really excited about the potential. And for a lot of personal reasons, it didn't work out. Understandable, but the team was hard for all of us.
Yeah.
So it's that balance between what level of emotion do I share with the team? What level of reality do we share with the team? And what level of leadership goes into all of that?
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's all intertwined. Like there's no way to put any one of those things in a bucket. Close relationships, which is part of what makes a small team successful and magical and move more quickly together. Then you've got, I would imagine in your business, you're the primary person responsible for bringing in investor funding. So that's another role that you hold. You provide the strategic direction. You are, I want to use this word because I can't find another one. You're the mama bear. You're part of the glue that holds everyone together, I would imagine. I hate to use gender specific words in that situation just because of gender stereotypes around leadership, but you're the you're the leader of the pack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you run a company that has to make money and hit certain metrics. So they have paychecks so that you all can be together as a pack. I mean, it's all
all the things.
All the things all the time.
All the things all the time. And there's good stress and there's bad stress. And just where do you share it to motivate everybody? And where do you share it so that everybody has a realistic vision?
Yes. I call it pragmatic hope.
Yes. I like that.
What is your indicator that you've gone too far either way? Is there something you feel in your body? Is it a certain word you're like, oh, went too far, saw that on her face? Or, what is the indicator for you?
Yeah, it's, I don't know if I'm a little bit more empathic or I just know my team pretty well. So each person on the team has a different thing that I start to feel and worry. Like I can see how they don't quite respond the same way for a couple of days. Right now it's hard because we're all on Zoom, and granted, we've been remote for a long time. So for us, this isn't that different, but it's picking up on cues differently, right? Like if somebody doesn't share as much with their personal stuff when we either start our chit chat or end with chit chat on all of our meetings, those are the things that in my gut, I'm like, did I overshare to make them feel uncomfortable? There's something else going on, or is it really just them? Because sometimes it's not anything having to do with the company. But again, in a small company, there's just so much intertwined.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have high emotional awareness to look for those little cues that might be indicating something big.
Yeah. And they aren't always.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they are.
Yeah. I can see that. So I'm so curious to know, tell me about pivoting from B2C to B2B. How long has that journey taken you? What does it look like? Got a few other questions. I know I kind of leapfrogged on you, but
no, that's good.
This like switching up business models. This is something a lot of companies do and struggle with at various points. And so I'd love to hear your insights on making that leap.
So what we learned after that site crash was that we really had to completely rebuild all of our software, right? Like all the code needed to be stronger. We needed just better architecture underneath. We needed better infrastructure in our hosting, and that costs a lot of money. And as I mentioned, things had been a little stressful with my marriage as all of this was going through. My mom had been my business partner for a long time, and we had kind of made the decision somewhere around here that she was ready to, go and do other things. And I was ready to kind of take this on. So the opportunities for a lot of change were all right there in front of me, but they all were going to take cash and capital that I didn't have right then.
Okay.
So in order to make these changes and look ahead, I had to figure out what was the best model to make money and to get that capital. And in Indianapolis, investors know B2B SaaS, not exclusively at all. But it's one that's known and proven, and I could get advice around.
Yes.
And
given our tech leaders and leadership, that makes complete sense here in Indy.
And in order for me to get new users, I knew I needed to get in front of them at the right time based on what my business is. And when is that right time? And that is generally when they're in a hospital, when they're at a doctor's office, when they've recently had some health event. How do I do that? Well, I can offer my software to a hospital. And by looking at that, what are they going to do? Are they going to offer WhatFriendsDo and somebody else's thing? No, but they might offer their own.
White label.
I could I could make some money on it.
Yes.
So we switched to the white label B2B model at that point.
Okay.
So those are just kind of all the things going through my head. Plus, investors like to see bigger dollars, especially in the Midwest. We're just not a B2C market for investors. And they don't take the same type of risk, and some do. But for the most part, that's not really where they're headed. And so it just made sense to switch the business model to white label software, selling into primarily healthcare, not exclusively, but primarily healthcare, and putting together an investor deck and went for investment and got some VC funding.
Wow.
And so in June of 2015, I was the first female in the state of Indiana to close VC funding of $500,000 or more.
Way to go. That's
Thanks.
amazing. Amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I say that not to pat myself on the back. Thank you.
Because I'll do it for you.
But I'd like everybody to really just think about the fact that 5.5 years ago, a female CEO in the state of Indiana had never closed venture funding of $500,000 or more. We've made a ton of strides since then.
Yeah, we'll let that commentary stand on its own.
Excellent.
Yes. Awesome. So that sounds like a super smart business pivot to me. Where has the company gone since then? And then you can answer the question, how many redundancies do you have built into your processes?
And you know what? It's like, as soon as we're done here, I'm going to actually start texting like, okay, so what's the exact number of redundancies? Because I know that we are. And like, anytime we hire a new developer, that is the first question that I ask them. If they want to re-architect anything, I'm like, what are we doing for backups? What are all of the, like, we're paying for all the extra backups.
Yes. Yes.
all of that. So where is the company now? So we have had a lot of success in healthcare, and we have actually additionally started moving into the pharma space, realizing that pharmaceutical companies, I mean, just even in the past 12 months, things have changed, obviously, significantly. But pharmaceutical companies are looking for additional digital supports for their patients.
Yes.
They are looking for additional ways to differentiate their drug from someone else's drug. And since the pandemic, sales reps can't get into doctors' offices to educate and or leave promotional materials about their drugs. So we are a digital add-on for them.
Nice.
To have. And to support their patients, because when it comes down to it, we've got some really great data around lowering readmission rates, increasing HCAP scores for hospitals, really
and
trying
HCAP
to
scores are
the scores that patients give when they're in a hospital, and then it affects the reimbursement.
Oh, when you get that big survey
payment
packet. Yes, got it.
How clean was the bathroom? How happy were you with the cafeteria staff? Someone who's really in the HCAP scores is going to roll their eyes at that response, but that's the like super high level version. And by that, I mean really high level version of it.
So user data that informs an accreditation score. Does that sound a little bit more professional, maybe? Yeah. Yeah.
But really what it comes down to is like, because there are line items like, were the bathrooms clean enough? And happier patients who are supported have better outcomes. And that's what we're doing.
Yes.
So that's been exciting. And during the pandemic, patients are feeling even more isolated. Everyone's feeling isolated, but patients especially, and caregivers, right? So you really have to rethink, how are you supporting someone? And it's digitally. That being said, our business is always about the human interaction, but everything has to be done digitally now.
Yes. Yeah. And it sounds like you all were in the perfect place to maximize care and support as we all had to go digital in many ways, yet maintain the human touch in the process. So you had worked really hard for many, many years to be in this magical place. When spring 2020 hit and the world imploded, you were able to serve even more effectively because you were ready.
We were ready. Last February, we were so excited with this new feature we were going to be rolling out. And it was from one of our clients. They had requested it. And it was live video chat integrated into the app.
Oh,
so that patients wouldn't feel isolated when they were sitting in a chemo chair. Fast forward a year. I mean, who doesn't have, even 60, 70, 80-year-olds have live video chat apps downloaded onto their phones already.
Yeah.
So we had no idea, but we were really excited about being this like brand new feature before the pandemic. And now we're finding it's still a really cool feature because it's already integrated, but it's not nearly as cool as we'd hoped it would be because people are already using it. On the other hand, that learning curve has really been helpful that we haven't had to do it.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. I heard a stat recently that said that basically the advancement of technology over the past year has, let me say it this way. We've advanced technology by 10 years in the past year because of forced adoption, because of the accommodations we had to make for the pandemic. I mean, that's mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing.
Yes.
Yeah. 10 years in 10 months is really what it was.
Yes. Whew. So 2 last questions. I'll let you go. And go talk to your developer about redundancies. But what do you wish mid-level leaders knew about what it means to be in your seat?
Every decision has so many layers before it can be answered that even just like what's the social media marketing budget going to look like? It's not usually just, okay, let me just tell you this number, X done. It's, okay, where am I going to pull the money from? How much money are we going to be making off of this? Mm-hmm. What kind of time? There's so many layers to finding the right answer. And then around that is, how is everyone going to be affected by the decision that's made? Because even like, how much money are we going to put into the social media budget? There's a lot of people that can be affected by that. There's a lot of things in the budget. There's a lot of things in the business that can be affected by all of that. And the bottom line is, how are my end users and how are my employees going to be affected? So, and maybe I think too much into a lot of these things, and I recognize that as well. But most decisions aren't snap that easy. Mm-hmm. Yep. Because we're really just trying to look out for the business as a whole, the employees as a whole, the users as a whole, and then obviously the investors also. So there's just a lot of factors.
That makes sense. Yeah. And meanwhile, your social media person's thinking, but if we just doubled the budget, look at all the new things we could do and all the business we could add. You're like, and yes. And
it would be great to test all of that out.
Yes. Fantastic.
Or that new feature you really want to build that's only going to cost so many tens of thousands of dollars.
That's right. That 1% of our users may want. Well,
let's fix the other ones first that we know that people are using.
Oh, priorities. So important. Oh my gosh, so important. So last question, I'll let you go. What do you know now about leadership that you wish you would have learned way back when, before the container fell apart?
That I'm always still going to be learning about leadership. I don't think anybody really has all of the answers. Especially in a startup, nobody has all of the answers because you haven't done it before. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a startup. So looking at every day, you're learning something more that's going to help hopefully make you a better leader, hopefully but make you a better business person. But I can't speak to the organizations that have been established for a long time and are able to replicate so well. But in a small business and in a startup, the reason you're in there is because you're trying to make change and it hasn't been done the same way before. But that also means that you don't necessarily have all of the answers yet. And to give myself grace as the leader when I don't have all of the answers.
That's all that face. Not the easiest thing to do. Oof. Especially for high achievers and overachievers, really.
And if you're starting a startup, you probably fall into a little bit of that space. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had the crazy to get you to do it.
That's right. I love it. Well, Aimee, thank you so much for not just sharing your story, but just bearing a piece of your soul with us. I know someone listening in needs to hear your story today. So I'm just eternally grateful that you would share the ups, the downs, the bumps, the bruises, and the amazing thing that has come from it in the process.
Well, Stephanie, thanks for letting me come in. Thanks for letting me cry and laugh. And,
always.
It was really fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Aimee. All right, my friends. Let's take a moment and send Aimee some love, some grace, some gratitude for being so open and vulnerable. The really serious, heartbreaking situation that happened not only in her personal life, but was intimately connected to her business. Here are 3 points that I took away from our conversation that I think are especially applicable to mid-level leaders. One is, listen to Aimee's key question that she asked herself during that struggle bus time, that time when she was really questioning everything she had built in her business to that point when the container dropped out. And the question was it worth the effort to continue? She knew enough at that point to know that there was a lot at stake if she were to rebuild her business. And I'm guessing you've been at a place like that in your career as well. Either you lost a job, or, because of something you did, or just because of company situations, or something has happened so drastic in your life that you've had to ask yourself that question. And the only way to answer it, in my opinion, is to muddle through and do the self-discovery that it takes to honestly and authentically be able to answer that question of how to actually move forward. And you heard what came of it, a switch from a B2C model to a B2B model. For a business, Aimee I just loved her linear logic around how she figured out how to pivot into a new market and white label their service, because she had her customers at the heart of her business. She knew that her job was to reach them when they most needed what friends do. In order to do that, she rethought the entire process and has become even more successful because of it, and hitting some tech and VC benchmarks here in Indianapolis that were unheard of before 2015. The second thing that I took away from our conversation that I know mid-level leaders need to hear is that every day she's learning something new. If you find yourself stalling out in your career or in the results that your team is responsible for, I want you to look yourself in the mirror, and I want you to, one, be honest about what are you learning, how often are you learning, and do you have your own learning plan so that you can equip yourself with the skills that you need now to move forward? That is one of the differentiator of entrepreneurs that I've met and CEOs is that they are constantly learning. I invite you to do the same. And then second, when you need to put yourself in your CEO's shoes, remember that every decision has many layers of information and perspectives that have to be added in before that decision can be made. And so chances are you might be thinking about the organization from your vantage point, from your department's vantage point, from its results. And your CEO has to think about the company in its entirety and all of its stakeholders and constituency groups. So when you present an idea to your CEO, I want you to put yourself in his or her shoes before you present that information. You're going to come across as more strategic, more focused, and more innovative. All right, my friends, let's get off the internet. Let's be a problem solver and a pro troublemaker that gets the real work done, that does the hard work like Aimee showed us how to do today. And I'll see you soon, my friend.